On today's Olympic Hockey Daily, presented by Locked On NHL, we're going to chat about the women's tournament knockout rounds with women's hockey expert Ann Tokarski.
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to this Olympic hockey edition of Locked On NHL. I'm Rachel Donner from Locked On Flyers. I'm on Twitter at rmiriam. I'm here with Ann Kimmel of Locked On Predators. Ann, where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter at ANK_Mama on Ice.
How are we doing today?
We are good. So very much hockey we have to talk about between men's tournament, women's tournament. We've got lots of good conversation to be had.
I am looking forward to it. Yeah, lots of good action on both sides, on the men's and women's side over the last day. Thanks for making Locked On NHL your first listen every day. We are free and available on all of your favorite podcasting platforms, and you can watch us over on YouTube. All right, so there's a lot to talk about. Like we just said, we are halfway through the quarterfinals right now. And so we thought we would bring on one of the foremost experts on women's hockey to the show, Ann Tokarski. She covers women's hockey for the Ice Garden and the 9 newsletter. Let's welcome her to the show.
Hi, thank you so much for having me on.
We're so happy to have you here, and just make it a little confusing because there's 2 Anns, but we're going to go with it and it's going to be okay.
It's going to be great.
Sounds perfect.
All right. So, we saw in that first quarterfinal between Team USA and Czechia that USA struggled a little bit in this game, and that Czechia seems to have figured out Team USA, that basically you just have to win the race to the puck, and if you don't, you cause trouble so they can't get a good shot off, which essentially worked until the third period when they ran out of gas and couldn't generate any chances of their own. But what do you think that means for Team USA and game plans for their opponents moving forward?
Well, I think it's a little bit tough because now that Czechia has figured out the United States, every other country was watching that game. Every other country in the tournament knows how to figure out the USA. And it's kind of like a game of cat and mouse throughout the rest of the tournament, waiting to see who's going to figure out which country first. And now that someone has the key, it's going to be very, very interesting to see who uses that and utilizes that knowledge to their advantage.
One of the areas where Team USA has struggled a little bit is in special teams. Do you think that they improved at all in their quarterfinal round against Czechia? And if not, what do they need to do to kind of make that something that works to their advantage?
There's a lot they need to work on, to be honest. I know there's a lot of criticism about Joel Johnson and his coaching style. And while I can't say I agree with all of the criticism, the fact of the matter is that the American penalty kill is ranked 8th out of 10 teams. So I think if you're going to take penalties, that's something you have to do, and you have to be willing to stop and help out your goaltender. The goaltenders can only do so much. So I think the defense and even the forwards really have to plays and be responsible on both sides of the puck.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like even though Brianna Decker isn't there, that really hasn't affected Team USA's performance overall, that they've been able to fill some of what she does. But do you think it's had a big effect on their play?
I wouldn't say it's had too big of an effect on their play, but then again, we really didn't see what they were capable of with her. So it's kind of hard to gauge where they are without her, because we don't know where they would be with her. I think if they had her on the team things might have gone a little differently against Canada, but I can't say for certain, where the team would be. I mean, they're in pretty good standing in the tournament anyways, so I'd say they're doing just fine without her.
Okay, so speaking of Team Canada, this is a team that really can seem to do no wrong. Do they have any weaknesses that other, opposing teams could capitalize on at all?
Oh, that's a great question. I mean, they take a lot of penalties, but their penalty kill is so good that it's almost like it doesn't really matter. So,
yeah,
honestly, they're kind of unstoppable right now.
They really are, and you just see them kind of designing plays at will as they're on the rush and just pulling from their arsenal of what they're capable of. And, especially in that game against Sweden, it just seemed like they could just, do whatever they wanted, and there was going to be a good chance that something went in. And it was just a remarkable thing to watch, because I don't think Sweden isn't that bad a team. Sweden actually had some successful defense against Canada. There was a huge stretch where they did not score. So I think they were capable of it. I just think that there's so much more in the toolbox for Canada that it just became overwhelming.
Yeah, I definitely agree.
So Emma Soderberg got chased from that game, and I felt really bad for her, because I think she's somebody that has stood out in this tournament a lot. But from your perspective, are there any other goaltenders who have been notable to you? And also, what is Team USA thinking in terms of their goaltender choices?
Okay, so touching on that Team USA thing, for starters, I have no idea. I honestly think off her Olympic performance in the PWHPA, Nicole Hensley really deserves a shot. This should be her crease to lose, and she hasn't really gotten that opportunity at all. She's played one game, and that's just really ridiculous to me, because she's so good and she's so underrated. And I feel like a lot of people are going to have that same sentiment about her. In terms of other goaltenders that have had strong performances, I would say Klara Peslarova. She's been really impressive all of the time, honestly. Even before this Olympic tournament, she was named a top 3 performer on Czechia since the days of her U18 career, and she's been such a superstar in literally every league she's played in, from the Czech league to the Swedish league to the Russian league. But in terms of this tournament, she's really stood out as a player who is determined to have a fresh start every game and every period. And I think that energy has really benefited her and her team.
That's some good mental energy to take into a game for your team. So talking about mental energy and effort, thinking about a potential rematch between Team USA and Team Canada, what does Team USA have to do mentally and in their game to prepare themselves for a potential rematch against a Canadian team that's just playing lights out right now?
We talked about this a little bit earlier, but I'd say their main thing is stop taking penalties. When you have a penalty kill that's 8th out of 10 teams, you kind of want to not take penalties.
Yeah.
So I think that's something that they should work on. But also just don't get in your head and play your own game. Don't look at Canada and be like, oh, we have to be better than them. We have to, do all this stuff to neutralize them. Play your game. Set the tone, set the pace. Do what you can to make it your game that you're controlling. Don't just play against them. Play for yourself too.
I think that's a good plan. I think that, they have to utilize what they do best and, let the chips fall where they may. We have 2 other semifinals coming up, Finland versus Japan and ROC versus Switzerland. And, I think for me, Team Japan is one of the countries that have stood out to me in terms of taking a step forward in terms of their standing in international women's hockey. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I 100% agree. I think Japan has had a really solid outing both in this tournament and at Worlds in August. And I honestly think this tournament has demonstrated that they're a competitor who, over the next couple of years, maybe the next decade or so, they could become like a serious contender for a medal. And maybe that's a little optimistic. Maybe that's a little just me rooting for the underdog. But I don't know. Like, I think this game against Finland, with how Finland's performed, I think it could be a toss up, you know?
So, with the infusion of additional funds into the PHF, do you think any of the international players or players from North America who are playing in Europe or in China right now, do you think that that may tempt them to come back to play here next year?
Oh, that's such a good question. And I wish I had a concrete answer, but I think that's something that'll happen in the next couple of years. I think they kind of want to wait and see what the PHF is going to do with that money because, you know, in year two, there were the salary cuts after like such a promising start. And it's kind of like, well, they got all this money, but like, where's it going to go? You know, like, is it going to go direct to the players? Is it going to go to health insurance? Is it, what's it going to go to? And we haven't really had that transparency. So I think over the next couple of years, we're kind of going to figure it out, and maybe a couple of players might migrate over.
Yeah, I absolutely think it's going to be an interesting next couple of years between, you know, what the PHF is doing and what the PWHPA is continuing to do. I think that the investment is going to grow from here and could completely reshape what women's hockey looks like beyond the university game. So it'll be quite a thing to observe. But Anne, thank you so much for joining us to talk about the women's hockey tournament at these Olympics. Where can people find you out there?
Yeah, so I'm primarily on Twitter, unless you want to add me on LinkedIn, but my Twitter handle is at Ann Tokarski. Tokarski is Tokarski, and that's Ann with an E.
All right. Once again, thank you so much for joining us. And we're looking forward to the rest of the tournament.
Me too. Thank you for having me.
That was so great. I love talking about women's hockey with people who are experts and, you know, the people who follow it on a regular basis. And Ann Tokarski is absolutely one of those people. We're going to get to the men's side of the tournament coming up real quick, but first, we're going to talk about our friends over at Built Bar. And this is a time of year that if you make a New Year's resolution, maybe you've given up on it at this point. But this year, you can get right back on board thanks to Built Bar. And they have these amazing bars called Puffs. If you haven't, you're missing out on the first ever protein infused marshmallow. They're fluffy, they're marshmallowy, they're such a treat. And they're a fan favorite with some incredible flavors like cinnamony churro, coconut marshmallow, and banana cream pie. And all Built Bars, including those puffs, are covered in 100% real chocolate. So go to built.com and scroll down to the macros chart. You're going to be blown away. Built Bars are high protein and low calorie. They're high fiber, but also low carb. Most Built Bars contain 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 net carbs, but also have 17 grams of protein. And if you compare that to a candy bar, that's going to have 240 calories and a ton of sugar and a ton of carbs. They have so many great flavors to choose from with their regular bars. I like coconut almond and mint brownie. New for this month is white chocolate cookies and cream. They've got new flavors coming out all the time. They make it taste delicious first, then figure out how to make it healthy, and they pull it off every time. So go to built.com and use the promo code LOCKED15. You'll get 15% off your order. That's promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at built.com. Once again, thanks for making Locked On NHL your first listen every day. We are free and available on all of your favorite podcasting platforms. All right, Ann. So there's a whole other side to the tournament going on in the men's tournament with the preliminary rounds still underway. And there were a lot of fun games over the last day or so.
It was a hockey palooza in my house between watching some quarterfinal matches and then the men's preliminary. There is a lot of great hockey to watch. Some of the games that were played, we had Denmark versus the Russia Olympic Committee team, which the Russian team won 2-0. But great shutout win for Ivan Fedotov. And you mentioned, and I'm sure are thrilled to hear that he got a shout out from
Yes,
Chuck
he did.
Fletcher at the Flyers presser. So eyes are watching these games. Some of these younger prospects, people are definitely watching performances.
Absolutely. And he also mentioned Noah Cates, who got a goal for Team USA in their first outing. So, yeah, NHL team management are absolutely keeping an eye on this tournament, even though the NHL players aren't there, because a lot of teams' futures are on these teams out there. And so it's a lot of fun to watch. And speaking of that, the next game was Sweden versus Slovakia. And man, Slovakia is still struggling to get a win, losing to Sweden 4-1. And their draft eligible guys, though, are still performing really well. Yura Slafkovsky got the lone goal for Slovakia. He has such great instincts out there. And I think he's also really good on the boards.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's where one of those skills where it may not translate to the scoreboard, but it's going to be something like we were just talking about. That's going to be something that people are going to be noticing as they're watching these games. For, the individual, this is going to be great to perform, even though, Slovakia didn't win their game, to be able to perform well. People are noticing these things. We did have some good standouts for Sweden too. Max Freiberg had a great game. He had a goal and an assist in the first period, and that kind of got Sweden going. So that game had some good performances on both sides of the puck.
It did. In the game from Czechia versus Switzerland, that was a burner as well, going to the shootout. And Boston Bruins fans, of course, I'm sure were excited to see David Krejci get the game-winning goal in that shootout.
Yep, that was a long game with a big finish, I think. And of course, we had Latvia played Finland. This was a great game. I really enjoyed this one. Finland won 3-1. But it was much closer than that final score sort of indicates. Latvia tied it up in the third period 1-1, and it was really close. Latvia sort of found their feet and were very competitive against this Finnish team. But then committed a penalty. And we talked about this with Ann Tokarski, that, these penalties can be the things that change games. And it was for Finland. They got a power play goal to make it 2-1. And then with less than 2 minutes remaining, got another goal. So the game ended up 3-1. But it was a much closer competition on the ice than maybe what that score indicates.
Yeah, and it was really good to see Uncle Leo Komarov on the scoreboard with the go-ahead goal for Finland. Man, people love him. I think it's great that people call him Uncle Leo. And he has a lot of fans from his NHL time, and that was fun to see.
That is fun. It's not just fun to watch the young guys. Sometimes it's fun to watch the more mature crowd as well.
Exactly. Well, we're going to see that tonight in the big Canada versus USA matchup where, there are young guys on Team Canada. Don't get me wrong. We have Owen Power there as well. But, Team USA, like we've been talking about, took a younger approach to building their roster, filling in with some veteran players. Canada seemed to pull from their top guys playing in leagues in other countries and then supplement with the younger prospects, with Owen and Mason McTavish. So it should be, it's the clash of the Titans in a lot of ways, but it's also going to be an interesting look at the philosophy of building these rosters and which might have been the better approach.
No, I know. And I think that probably is the most exciting storyline that's going to come out of this game is the backstory of these two teams. Now, there are going to be some exciting players to watch. I know USA had a very strong game against China, and Sean Farrell, 5-point game there. He had 3 goals, 2 assists. So I'm excited to see him back out on the ice, see how that translates up against this Canadian team. But Canada also had a strong first performance. I think they beat Germany 5-1. So, these are two teams that have started off strong. It's going to be very interesting and very fun to watch the two of them take on their opponent in USA Canada on ice is always a good game to watch.
It is, and just really happy, honestly, for Claude Julien. He's back behind the bench for Team Canada. He had slipped on some ice, and they thought he wasn't going to be able to make the trip and be able to do that. So I'm happy for him. And yeah, very much looking forward to this matchup tonight. And then we've got a whole slate of games over the weekend, of course. For the men, I think the matchup between China and Germany should be really fun to watch. Those are the two teams that lost to USA and Canada in their first game. So both of them are going to be eager to get some wins. And I think, the physicality of both of those teams is going to match up real well.
Yeah, no, I think that's going to be a great game. And I think it will be, like you said, very interesting to see the opponents of USA Canada take each other on. And then we have Finland versus Sweden, which I think is going to be another interesting game. I think this is going to be one of those games that's going to tell you a lot about the rest of the tournament. So I'm going to keep an eye on that one. That one is on in less North America friendly times, but still going to be worth watching.
Yes. And of course, those teams are rivals going back to the dawn of time. So
Yes.
they always seem to take it up a notch when they face each other in international play in that Scandinavian rivalry.
Yes, for sure. Yep. I said today earlier on a podcast, you don't stir that Scandinavian pot because it will bubble over.
Then, of course, we have the women's semifinals coming up. We'll have USA against the winner of that Finland-Japan game that we talked about in the first segment. And then Canada will face the winner of Russia versus Switzerland. So very exciting, lots of games, and we'll have a lot to talk about when we're back on Monday. And we're going to do a 2-shot on Monday for y'all. Very excited to bring that to you. We'll have a standalone episode where we're going to be talking to Mike Murphy from the Ice Garden, and he is a women's hockey expert as well as somebody who's deep into the numbers and the analytics. So we're going to talk about how you use analytics in these short form tournaments and what you can learn from it. So I think it should be a really good conversation there. And then we're going to drop a second episode into your feeds talking about all the action from all these games we just talked about.
Yeah, there's going to be a ton of hockey to cover, so we're going to do that. But I am so excited about Mike Murphy coming on and talking with us. He really has such great insight into not just the game, but the numbers of the game. So that's going to be fantastic on Monday.
I am so excited. Well, that'll do it for today's show. Thanks again for listening, and have a most excellent weekend.